So I'm sprawled out on my porch swing, legs kicked up, a frosty glass of sweet tea sweat beading in my hand. Sunday afternoon. Pure, unadulterated bliss. The birds are chirping, the sun's doing its thing, and my perfectly respectable, freshly stained wooden fence? Well, it's just existing. Doing its fancy duty. You know, keeping the squirrels out and the chill vibes in. Then, thwump, that sound. You know the one. The sound of impending doom delivered in a crisp, white, bureaucratic package. The dreaded envelope. The HOA letter. My heart? It just did a little tap dance of terror. I know that font. That sterile, sans serif font that screams, "We're here to ruin your day!" I rip it open, bracing myself, and bam! Violation notice, Eyesore. My eyes practically popped out of my head like those cartoon eyeballs on springs. Eyesore? I squawked, nearly spilling my tea. My fence? Are they seriously pulling my leg? The letter, oh, the letter. It was like reading a thesaurus entry for pretentious. It droned on and on about community aesthetic, and how my perfectly normal fence was apparently an affront to suburban sensibilities. They demanded I either remove, repaint, or replace it entirely. Replace it? I muttered, incredulous. They're talking like it's a moldy shipwreck, not a perfectly good fence. My internal monologue went into overdrive. Seriously? I thought, my voice dripping with sarcasm. My fence is the problem? Have these people lost their minds? Have they even seen Bob's chain-link monstrosity? That thing looks like it escaped from a maximum security dog pound, and Mrs. Henderson's fence? It looks like it wrestled a tornado and lost. I stood up, pacing the porch, the letter crinkling in my clenched fist. An eyesore, I repeated, my voice rising. They call my fence an eyesore. I waved my hand vaguely towards the street. Half the fences on this block are held together by sheer willpower and rusty nails. I grabbed my tea again, taking a long, furious gulp. This, I declared to the empty porch, this calls for action. This calls for... Well, I'm not sure yet, but it's gonna be good. Right, time for a little face-to-face. I grabbed that ridiculous letter, crumpled though it was, and marched across the street. My destination? The fortress of Karen, HOA overlord and purveyor of suburban misery. I rang the doorbell, and after a moment that felt like an eternity, the door swung open. And there she was, Karen. Standing there, a picture of smug satisfaction, with that I know something you don't know grin plastered on her face. Ah, she purred, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. You received our notice. Notice? I scoffed, waving the letter like a flag of rebellion. You call that a notice? I call it a declaration of war on good taste. I pointed out the sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy of her complaint. Karen, seriously. Half the fences in this neighborhood look like they survived a zombie apocalypse. Mine is practically a work of art compared to some of them. I gestured wildly down the street. Bob's chain-link monstrosity? Mrs. Henderson's fence that's more rust than wood? And you're telling me my fence is the problem? She gave me that look. You know the one. The condescending, I'm so much better than you look that makes you want to launch a garden gnome at her head. Yours is the most offensive, she said, drawing out the word most, like it was a particularly unpleasant flavor. It simply doesn't align with our vision. Offensive? I sputtered, my voice rising. Offensive? My fence is offensive. Lady, your garden gnomes are a crime against horticulture. They're staring into my soul with their creepy little painted eyes. My internal monologue was screaming. Vision! What vision? A vision of beige conformity? A vision where every blade of grass is precisely 3 inches long? I took a deep breath, trying to control my rising fury. "Look, Karen," I said, trying to sound reasonable, even though every fiber of my being wanted to scream, "This is ridiculous! You're being completely unreasonable!" But I could see it in her eyes, the glint of power, the smug satisfaction. Arguing was pointless. Karen was in full power trip mode, and she was loving every minute of it. "All right," I said, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face. "Fine. You want a vision? I'll give you a vision. A vision so spectacular, so breathtaking. It'll make your garden gnomes weep with envy." I turned and walked away, leaving Karen standing on her porch, a look of puzzled confusion on her face. "You just wait, Karen," I muttered under my breath. "You just wait." Back on my porch, I was practically vibrating with rage. "Aesthetic," she said. "Vision," she said. Ugh. I could feel the steam practically coming out of my ears. I paced back and forth, muttering under my breath, "Offensive, my fence, offensive?" But then, just as I was about to reach peak levels of incandescent fury, a thought hit me. A glorious, magnificent, utterly devious thought. "Aesthetic, huh?" I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. "They want aesthetic? I'll give them aesthetic. I'll give them so much aesthetic they'll be begging for beige." I started pacing faster, my mind racing. "And community spirit? Oh, they want community spirit? I'll give them community spirit so hard they'll choke on it. They'll be swimming in community spirit." I grabbed my trusty notebook, the one I usually used for grocery lists and random doodles, and started sketching furiously. Operation Fence-tastic Revenge was officially underway. "First things first," I muttered, scribbling down a list. "Paint, lots and lots of paint, every color imaginable. We're talking rainbow explosion, folks." I tapped my pen against the notebook, my mind buzzing with ideas. And we'll need artists, real artists. Not just finger-painting toddlers, though that could be fun too. We need talent. We need visionaries. "Food trucks," I added, scribbling faster. "We need food trucks. Tacos, ice cream, those mini donuts that smell like heaven. We're throwing a party, people. A full-blown fence-painting fiesta." "Music," I shouted, startling a nearby squirrel. "We need a sound system, something loud, something fun. Maybe some 80s hits, or a polka band?" Decisions. And then, the piece de resistance. "A giant caricature of Karen," I declared, sketching a cartoonish figure with pointy fairy wings and an exaggeratedly smug expression. "She'll be the star of the show. The HOA fairy sprinkling rules like they're pixie dust." I looked at my list, a wicked grin spreading across my face. "This," I said to the squirrel, who was now staring at me with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "This is going to be epic. All right, time to rally the troops." I grabbed my phone, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. "Let's see if Karen can handle a little community spirit," I muttered as I opened up my social media app. I typed out a message, adding a few strategically placed exclamation points for emphasis. "Calling all artists, kids, and anyone who hates boring fences. Let's turn my eyesore into a masterpiece. Who's in?" I hit post and waited. And then, boom! My notifications exploded. It was like I'd unleashed a horde of art-hungry, fence-hating warriors. People were commenting, sharing, and tagging their friends. "I'm in. I've always wanted to paint a giant portrait of a squirrel." "Count me in. My kid's been drawing on the walls anyway. Might as well give him a legal canvas." This is the most epic act of HOA defiance I've ever seen. I'm bringing the snacks. I was overwhelmed, in the best way possible. This was way bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about my fence anymore. It was about the whole neighborhood. But I needed more than just enthusiastic amateurs. I needed professionals. So I started reaching out to local artists, sending them messages and sharing my vision, which, let's be honest, was still a bit hazy. But hey, who doesn't love a little creative chaos? And guess what? They were thrilled. A giant mural on a fence that's been deemed an eyesore by the HOA? Sign me up, one artist replied. I've always wanted to paint a portrait of a grumpy HOA president with fairy wings, another one messaged. Clearly, Karen's reputation preceded her. Next stop, the local schools. I marched into the principal's office, armed with my most charming smile and a PowerPoint presentation titled Turning Fences into Masterpieces, a Community Art Project. The principal, a kind-faced woman with a penchant for tie-dye, was immediately on board. This is exactly the kind of creative community-building project our students need, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. She even offered to let the art classes use the school's art supplies. Score! Things were moving fast. My little act of rebellion was turning into a full-blown art extravaganza. And Karen? Oh, she had no idea what was coming. Okay, people, it's the big day. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and my backyard? It's basically a scene out of a Technicolor dream. We've got paint buckets lined up like soldiers, brushes of all shapes and sizes, and enough snacks to fuel a small army. Kids are darting everywhere, their faces smeared with paint. They're attacking the fence with the kind of reckless abandon that only a 5-year-old with a paintbrush can muster. It's a beautiful, chaotic mess. The real artists, though, they're in the zone. They're sketching, outlining, and blending colors with the kind of focused intensity that makes you want to whisper and tiptoe around them. One guy's even got one of those berets perched on his head. You know, for artistic flair. And the neighbors? They're out in full force. They're chatting, laughing, and offering words of encouragement, and sometimes unsolicited art critiques. Mrs. Henderson even brought her famous chocolate chip cookies. I swear those things could end wars. The fence itself? It's a masterpiece in progress, a riot of color. We're talking eye-popping, mind-bending, impossible-to-ignore vibrancy. It's like a unicorn threw up on a rainbow and then the whole thing exploded in a glitter factory. Giant, bold letters scream community unity across the entire length of the fence. It's like a superhero slogan, but for, you know, people who like to paint and hate the HOA. And then there's Karen. Oh, Karen. Immortalized in all her glory. A giant caricature of her, complete with fairy wings, a smug expression, and a wand that's sprinkling tiny little rules, like pixie dust. I even added a little speech bubble that says, conform or be gone. You know, for accuracy. But the real fun is in the details. Hidden messages are tucked away like Easter eggs. Long live the fence, proclaims one, nestled amongst a cluster of flowers. HOA approved, not really, declares another, peeking out from behind a cartoon squirrel. And my personal favorite, a tiny little gnome hidden in the corner flipping the bird. Subtle, I know. The whole thing is just glorious. It's a celebration of color, community, and sticking it to the man, or, you know, the woman. And the best part, we're just getting started. With the mural nearing completion, it was time to take this party to the next level. I mean, what's a masterpiece without a proper celebration? First things first, I called in the big guns. Food trucks. We're talking gourmet tacos, wood-fired pizza, and an ice cream truck that played that annoyingly catchy jingle. But hey, who can resist ice cream? The aroma of deliciousness wafted through the air, making everyone's stomachs rumble in anticipation. Next up, music. I managed to snag a local band known for their eclectic mix of covers and surprisingly catchy originals. They set up in my driveway, their instruments gleaming in the afternoon sun. I even rigged up a sound system that would make a club owner jealous. We were ready to rock. But no party is complete without a little friendly competition, right? So I organized a raffle. And not just any raffle, mind you. We're talking prizes that would make even Karen jealous. Free HOA-free year was the grand prize, followed by Karen's favorite garden gnome, which I may or may not have borrowed from her lawn. The party was a roaring success. The music was pumping, the food was delicious, and the raffle was causing a frenzy. People were dancing, laughing, and admiring the mural. It was like the whole neighborhood had come together to celebrate art, community, and the glorious defeat of HOA tyranny. Kids were chasing each other with paint-stained hands, their laughter echoing through the streets. Adults were chatting and mingling, their faces glowing with smiles. Even grumpy old Mr. Johnson, who usually only emerged from his house to yell at squirrels, was tapping his foot to the music. The mural, now bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, looked even more spectacular. The colors seemed to dance and shimmer, and the hidden messages winked playfully at passers-by. It was a testament to the power of community, creativity, and a healthy dose of rebellion, as the party wound down and the last of the guests departed. I stood back and surveyed the scene. My heart swelled with pride. We did it. We took a boring old fence and turned it into a symbol of unity, defiance, and pure, unadulterated joy. And Karen? Well, let's just say she wasn't invited. The party's in full swing, music's blasting, people are laughing, and suddenly the air seems to crackle with tension. Why? Because Karen, our HOA Queen Bee, has just emerged from her hive. Drawn by the noise, she steps out onto her porch, and her face? Oh, it's priceless. Her jaw drops, her eyes widen, and she looks like she's seen a ghost, or maybe a unicorn vomiting rainbows. Either way, it's a sight to behold. She stumbles down her front steps, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly askew, her eyes fixed on the monstrosity that was once my humble fence. Her face is turning an alarming shade of red, like a tomato that's been left out in the sun too long. She reaches the edge of my yard, opens her mouth to speak, but nothing. Only a series of sputtering sounds emerge, like a dial-up modem trying to connect to the internet. But the rules! She manages to sputter out, her voice trembling with indignation. The crowd, sensing a spectacle, turns to watch. A wave of laughter ripples through the party. Someone even starts taking pictures. "Smile for the camera, Karen!" a voice calls out, followed by more laughter. Karen, bless her heart, looks like she's about to spontaneously combust. She glares at the crowd, her eyes blazing with fury. This is unacceptable!" she finally manages to shriek, her voice cracking. "This is visual chaos! This is... She trails off, unable to find the words to describe the sheer audacity of my fence. And honestly, I can't blame her. It's pretty epic. The crowd, meanwhile, is loving it. They're cheering, clapping, and chanting, "Long live the fence! Long live the fence!" Karen throws her hands up in the air, a gesture of utter defeat. "This is not over!" she yells, her voice barely audible over the noise. "I will not be defeated by a fence!" And with that, she spins around and marches back into her house, slamming the door behind her. The crowd erupts in cheers, and the party continues with even more gusto. Yeah, Karen's reaction, totally worth it. Okay, so the next morning, I wake up to another lovely piece of mail from my favorite HOA. This time, it's an invitation, or should I say, a summons, to an emergency HOA meeting. Emergency? I scoffed, throwing the letter on the table. What's the emergency, Karen? That my fence is too fabulous for your delicate sensibilities? But hey, who am I to miss a good show? So I throw on my paint-splattered hoodie. You know, the one that still has a faint aroma of artistic expression. Grab a cup of coffee, and head on over to the community center. The meeting room is packed. I mean, standing room only packed. It's like the whole neighborhood decided to show up for this showdown. I spot Karen at the front of the room, her face a mask of disapproval. She looks like she sucked on a lemon and then accidentally swallowed it whole. "Order! Order!" she screeches, banging a gavel on the table. "This emergency meeting has been called to address the, she sputters, gesturing wildly towards the window that overlooks my backyard. The unacceptable visual chaos that has been inflicted upon our community. The room erupts in murmurs. I can see the HOA members are divided. Some are nodding along, their faces etched with horror. Others are trying, and failing, to suppress giggles. And then there are those who are just staring at me with a mixture of awe and bewilderment. "This," Karen continues, her voice rising to a fever pitch, "is a clear violation of our community standards. It's an affront to decency. It's—" She pauses, searching for the right word. "It's garish." I take a sip of my coffee, trying not to laugh. "Garish?" I think to myself. "Lady, you have a pink flamingo collection that could rival a zoo." Karen, meanwhile, is on a roll. "This so-called mural," she says, her voice dripping with disdain, "is not in line with our neighborhood guidelines. It's unauthorized beautification." The room erupts in laughter. Even some of the HOA members can't help but crack a smile. "Unauthorized beautification?" I repeat, raising an eyebrow. "Is that even a thing?" Karen glares at me, her eyes narrowed. "It is now," she declares, "and I will not rest until this eyesore is removed." Oh, Karen, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Okay, Karen wants to play hardball? It's time to bring out the big guns. The HOA rule book. I reach into my bag, pull out the dusty tome. Seriously, who reads these things? And flip through the pages. "Karen," I say, my voice dripping with mock innocence, "show me where it says I can't have a mural on my fence." She stumbles over her words, her face turning a delightful shade of crimson. It's implied," she sputters. I smirk. "Implied? That's not how rules work, Karen. You can't just go around implying things. It's all about the letter of the law, remember?" I hold up the rule book, waving it like a trophy. "This book," I declare, "is our Constitution. It's the sacred text of suburban living, and guess what? It says nothing about murals. Nada, zilch, zero." I slam the book down on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "So, unless you've got a secret HOA rule book hidden under your perfectly manicured lawn, I'm afraid my mural is here to stay." But I'm not done yet. I decide to turn the tables. I point out Mrs. Henderson's overgrown bushes that are practically blocking the sidewalk. I mention Mr. Johnson's rusty old car that's been sitting in his driveway for months. And let's not forget Bob's chain-link fence, which is basically a monument to rust and neglect. "Seems like there are a lot of implied violations going on around here," I say, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Maybe we should have an emergency meeting about those too." The room is silent. Karen is speechless. I can practically see the smoke coming out of her ears. "Or," I continue, leaning forward, "maybe we can just agree that my mural is awesome and move on with our lives?" The room erupts in applause. Even some of the HOA members are clapping. Karen sinks back in her chair, defeated. "Rulebook redemption? Check. Oh, but the saga continues." Karen, bless her stubborn little heart, wasn't about to go down without a fight. Defeated at the emergency meeting, she went into full-on revenge mode. Her next move? A desperate attempt to change the HOA rules themselves. A few weeks later, another HOA meeting notice arrived. This one announced a proposal for a new rule: a complete and utter ban on fence murals. "Game on, Karen," I muttered, a mischievous glint in my eye. This time, I wasn't just attending the meeting. Oh no, I was making a statement. I showed up armed with my trusty paintbrush, now slightly frayed, but still a weapon of creativity, and a can of bright pink paint. You know, just to add a touch of flair to the proceedings. The meeting room was tense. You could practically smell the animosity in the air. Karen, perched at the front of the room like a hawk protecting her nest, launched into a passionate speech about the sanctity of beige and the importance of conformity. But then something amazing happened. The neighbors revolted. One by one, they stood up and spoke out against the proposed rule. They talked about how the mural had brought the community together, how it had sparked conversations and friendships, and how it had even increased property values. "This mural," boomed Mr. Henderson, usually a man of few words, "has done more for this neighborhood than the HOA ever has." The room erupted in applause. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red than usual. She sputtered. She stammered. She tried to regain control of the meeting, but it was no use. The tide had turned. The vote was swift and decisive. The motion to ban fence murals failed spectacularly. Karen, defeated and humiliated, slunk back in her chair, her dreams of a beige-washed world crushed. It was a glorious victory for art, for community, and for the right to paint giant squirrels on your fence without fear of reprisal. And Karen? Well, let's just say she wasn't looking too happy. But wait, there's more! Just when I thought the drama was over, the city decided to throw a little fuel on the fire. You see, word of my epic fence battle had spread beyond the confines of our little neighborhood. It had reached the ears and eyes of the city council, and they were impressed. One day I received a very official-looking letter with the city's seal on it. I almost expected another violation notice, but no, this was something else entirely. The city had officially recognized my mural as a local art installation. Can you believe it? My fence, the one Karen called an eyesore, was now a celebrated piece of community art. This meant it was protected by the city, untouchable by the HOA's grubby little rules. It was like my fence had achieved superhero status, complete with immunity from Karen's evil schemes. And to top it off, I received a personal letter from the mayor himself, congratulating me on my outstanding contribution to the cultural landscape of our city. He even invited me to a fancy reception at City Hall, where I got to shake hands with important-looking people and eat tiny sandwiches with the crusts cut off. Yeah, Karen was not happy about this turn of events. I heard through the grapevine that she nearly choked on her chamomile tea when she heard the news. The city's recognition was the ultimate insult to injury, the cherry on top of my HOA revenge sundae. My fence, the symbol of my rebellion, was now a permanent fixture in the community, a testament to the power of art, community, and a healthy dose of defiance. And Karen? Well, let's just say she was not invited to the reception.